minutes for September the 24th. Sherry Deal will now present the September and October financial reports.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I put September and October, I put one on the back and one on the front. If you'll take a look at September, I'll just kind of focus on it for just a second. At this point in time, we were a fourth of the way through our fiscal year. Expenditures were in line with where they needed to be, and for the most part, our revenues were as well. The spent year-to-date total down at the bottom is $279,781, and if you take into account the time period we're in, that means that we've spent roughly about $93,000 a month. On the reverse side for October, again, for the most part, everything is in line with where it should be. One thing I want to mention, the second line item under our expenses for in-home services, that is elevated a little bit above where we are in the year. This is due to a repair to, I believe it was equipment for one of our CAP-C children, and so that is a little bit higher than it normally would be. That was a pretty expensive service. Also, right now, I know Cindy's going to be talking about this later on in the agenda, but our SIP monies, we are coming very close to having all of those expended. We really don't know at this point in time when or if we're going to get more money. We were allotted at the beginning of the year $122,000, and we're pretty close, below $5,000 right now as of today. One other item that I wanted to mention, our Links special fund monies, those are a special pot of money that we're able to utilize to help some of our children that are in the Links program. That is, even though it's in our line items, it's kind of outside of normal Links funding, and we are right now expecting a reimbursement of $1,500. Down at the very bottom, spent year-to-date is a little over $454,000 as of the end of October, and that translates into $113,000 that we've spent on a monthly basis. And I'll be glad to answer any questions.
I don't have.
It seems like October's the time that expenditures start increasing a little bit because of the...
Yeah, actually, next month for November, we will have our administration line item will be higher. We have 3 payrolls in the month of November. Usually, this time of year, we've had, unfortunately, a very, very hot summer, and normally our SIP monies would be actually increasing right now, but because of the hot summer, we've expended a lot of those due to crisis situations for small infants, some of our elderly population, people who have breathing problems. And so we're really hoping that the state's going to, or I should say the feds, we're going to release some more money to help the rest of our community. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Sherry. We will now hear the highlights of the statistical report from the DSS supervisors.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm Trena Riddle, and I supervise the Family and Children's Medicaid and Work First and daycare programs, but I'm filling in for Matthew today since he's on his honeymoon. If you will look on page 1 under Food and Nutrition, I just wanted to point out that since July, we've had an increase in food and nutrition of 50 households and 108 individuals, which is a huge jump for the quarter. And also on page 1, if you look at the crisis intervention that Sherry Deal was just telling you about, we spent $28,000 for this month. For this month, sorry. And that's increased to the cold weather and the fuel oil. We start doing fuel oil when it gets cold, and so that takes a lot of that money. On page 2, if you look under AFDCEA, that also increased in October due to the cold weather. The policy for that program is it has to be below 40 for 3 consecutive days for us to use that money for power bills. So that really picked up in October, and in November next month, you'll see a huge jump because we've done a lot for the month of November. And everything else in my programs has stayed about the same. Do you have any questions?
I don't.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Julie Sebastian. I'm the Adult Services Supervisor. A few things I want to mention. We did have a monitoring on our home delivered meals and our congregate meal site. We did have a few minors that we had to change. Meal temps, we're still working on that, and also using different cooling system, like the igloo coolers versus the bag coolers. We will be having our CAP monitoring this Wednesday for CAP DA and CAP Choice. And also I want to mention that this year is the first year that Adult Services has actually done an angel tree. We put those angels out this morning. We have around 45, and approximately almost half of those angels have already been taken just today from our agency. So we're thankful for that. A lot of times the elderly and disabled are looked over at Christmas time. So if you look on your statistical report on page 3, just to bring attention to a few things, in October, we do have a waiting list still of 111 for in-home aid in-home aid program. And that program, we're looking at a 1.5 to 2 year waiting list. Our guardianship numbers have increased. We're up to 7. And our CAP numbers, we are down. We are working to fill those. We have several FL2s out to doctor's offices. Seems like when we put one on, we lose one due to placement or death. So, our housing and home improvement waiting list is 14, and home delivered meal waiting list is 12. And if you look on page 4, you'll see that our adult protective service numbers have increased. We received 15 reports in the month of October. Is there any questions or anything?
Okay, thank you.
Well, good afternoon. I'm Holly Yongue, the Children's Services Program Manager. And if you'll look on page 5 of the statistical report, you'll see that we received 73 reports in the month of October. We accepted 57 of those reports for investigation or assessment. We screened out 2 reports. Excuse me. We had 76 investigations opened on the last day of the month and 34 in-home cases open on the last day of the month. We also had 46 children in our custody on the last day of the month of October. And as far as adoptions goes, I'm going to hold off on that for just a minute because we're actually going to do a presentation on adoptions for this month. And if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer those.
Holly, I meant to get to you about this before we got in here, but I might as well ask you now. We really jumped up between July and October with our number of open investigations at the end of the month, 36 cases. Is that just?
We are seeing cases that are higher needs, are taking longer really in the investigative process to work to put things in place for families, just really requiring a lot more work. And plus, I think part of that can be explained or looked at with several new staff, and the way or the speed at which they work a case is very different from the speed at which a seasoned worker would, of course, move through the life of a case. We've talked about before the differences between investigations and in family assessments, or investigative assessments and family assessments. Typically, an investigative assessment would be open for about 30 days and a family assessment for about 45 days. But as you learn that process, as you're a new worker and learning and working through that, it may take a little longer to get through those pieces and be sure that you're doing all those things that you need to be doing and staffing with your supervisor and working together and working with the family. I can't say with 100% certainty that that explains the drastic increase in that number. I think it's a combination of several things. But we are seeing some really tough cases come in. And I hear staff and the supervisors refer to, especially one of the investigators has just a caseload that just seems to be the caseload of caseloads. Very tough cases and very time-consuming, spending a lot of time out in the field with families trying to deal with issues. So, and I know we've had a lot of immediate type responses over the past couple weeks where we've got workers more than one at a time being called out from the agency during normal business hours to go out and respond to immediate type situations. So some pretty severe kind of things that we've been dealing with. Any other questions?
That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Holly. If there are no other DSS supervisor reports, our first program today will be Adoption Awareness presented by Holly Yongue and Trena Riddle.
Well, good afternoon. I am Holly Yongue. November is Adoption Awareness Month, and we have already had the pleasure of honoring our adoptive parents this month on Thursday night, or Thursday night, yeah. Last week was a long week. Thursday evening, we had an adoption banquet for our adoptive parents, and we provided a meal and had entertainment. And this is Tennille Holman, she is our adoption social worker, and one of our social work techs, Teresa Smith, did a wonderful job of putting together a video. The video is about 30 minutes long, so we're not going to be able to show it today. And Tennille's going to talk a little bit about that, but the video showcases 3 of our adoptive families from this past year that have adopted children, and was wonderful, was very well done, very touching. We also were able to provide some entertainment and get everybody laughing, I think, and had a really good time. It's always a fun time and a time for us to spend with our foster parents or adoptive parents, getting to know them and catch up with them and talk about what they're doing and how their children are doing, because sometimes they've adopted and we've not seen them in a couple years, and so it's always good to see them and their children. So some of the board members were there. It was wonderful to have those of you that could join us with us that night, and also county commissioners. It was a well-attended event, and we always enjoy putting that on for our families each year. I'm actually going to turn it over to Tennille, let her tell you a little bit about adoptions, where we've been and where we're going, and if you have any questions, we'll be glad to answer them. I don't know if you want me to leave that there.
We actually had 5 families that we had offered to allow them to participate in the video this year that had finalized their adoptions this year, and only 3 of them wanted to participate. But the first family that we had was a family that has fostered through our county, and they had several children placed in their home, and then they finally had the opportunity to adopt a child. He is 2, almost 3, I believe. And their adoption was finalized this past year. The second family that we had also had fostered through our home or through our agency and were allowed to adopt a child. They adopted a little girl. And then the last family that we had actually hosted a child. We had a child placed in a group home in Wilkes County, and they were her host family and had started visiting with her and doing things, just activities outside of the group home. And then she later became legally free for adoption, and they decided to adopt her. But I hate that we didn't get to watch the video today, but I wanted to share one of my favorite parts of the video, I think, for the child in the last portion of the video. She's 12, and she shared with us that she had told her family that they had made a difference in her life, so she had decided that when she got older, she wanted to adopt because they had made such a huge difference in her life. So I thought that was probably she was one of my kids on my foster care caseload, and then I was able to do her adoption as well, and I really enjoyed working with that family. They were wonderful to work with. But we still have several families. We have several adoptions that we're working on. We're hoping that we'll finalize several more adoptions within the next few months, and we have several kids that we
think are going to be legally free within the next probably 6-month period as well. But it's always sad, both sad and good whenever they get to that point, because it's hard for them not to reunify with their families. But hopefully they're able to move on and have a wonderful life with their adoptive family. So like Holly said, we had a wonderful time at our adoption banquet. It was a lot of fun, and we were able to celebrate with our adoptive families. That's all I have.
I have a question. What's the average age of a child adopted in this county? 12 sounds like it's old for a child to be adopted.
Yeah, I felt that she was very lucky. Most of the children that we have that become legally free for adoption are younger, and the majority of them are already in adoptive homes. Like, they'll be placed in a foster home, and then that foster home will end up being the ones to adopt the child. But as far as an average age, I'm not really
That's
sure.
preschool or?
It would probably be younger. Do you know about it?
That's,
Because some of when a child is over the age of 13, they have to consent to an adoption. So if they're over the age of 13 and they're in a placement, or they don't want to be adopted, then they usually have a different plan, maybe guardianship or custody with a relative, something like that.
Wouldn't you guess 7 or younger?
Yeah, that's what Holly was just saying, probably around 7 or 5 or younger. So yeah. Any more questions?
To Neil, tell them a little bit about our philosophy of foster to adopt, and the fact that we really do try to support our foster parents, our adoptive parents to foster.
We do. And I think that's changed a lot over the last several years, because it used to be that we wanted families just to foster or just to adopt. But now we like for our families, like if they foster a child, we always think that it's best for the child for them to stay in one placement. So we try to, if they foster the child and then the child later becomes legally free, then we usually encourage them to adopt. If that's what they want to do, then they end up adopting the child.
We're hopefully enticing those parents by saying, if you foster for us, you go in the front of the drawer. If you will adopt only, then we certainly are going to take that into consideration if we have a child available. But if we've got foster parents that are willing to foster those children and demonstrate their ability to care and love for a child, we certainly are going to.
Because the child's already established a bond with them, and hopefully, usually we have kids in custody for a couple years before they ever become legally free. So it's usually, a year or 2 years, sometimes 3 years down the road before they actually can be adopted. So we always think it's better for them to stay with the same family if possible.
So if we had a child that wasn't adopted by a foster parent and is available for adoption, how does that information get to prospective parents that would like to have a child?
There's a website called NC Kids, that kids that are legally free, and then that's for the state of North Carolina, that they are they're posted on there, just a small amount of information and usually a picture, and it's used to recruit adoptive families for the children if we don't have families already identified.
Well, I was at the banquet the other night, and it was really, really nice.
Yeah,
And the children, where were they? I didn't get to ask
they were
them.
across the road. We brought them over towards the end. I think you had already left, and so we brought them in towards the end and allowed them to be part of it as well. We did cupcakes with a number on the top representing the number of years since their adoption had been finalized, and let the kids give those out, and they sang a song that it was a Barney song, "I Love You, You Love Me."
Yeah.
So it was really cute.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. I enjoyed seeing you there and getting to talk to you. Any more questions?
That's,
Okay. Thank y'all.
Next, we will have Cindy Holman. We will have comments from Cindy Holman about the energy update.
What right down here so I can look at you while I'm talking to you. And you'll have to forgive my voice. I've been really sick and the gum, because if I don't have it, I'll cough my head off. I just wanted to bring you up to speed. I am going to talk with the commissioners tonight about our emergency crisis energy programs. And we have 3 different programs that we provide to the community. One is Crisis Intervention Program, and there has to be an emergency going on in the family. It's a heating or cooling program only. We have another program called Low Income Energy Assistance Program that's a one-time a year vendor payment, and it's usually attached to heating. And we do that in the wintertime, and our first date that we will take applications for that program is December the 3rd. So, and then we have one other program that we call Emergency Assistance. It's a county-funded program, and that pot of money is usually used for water, power, rent, but we do sometimes pay electric bills from that funding. These are 3 different kinds of funds. The emergency assistance we like to use for like we said, the power and rent things, for folks that may be, about to lose their home or be evicted, those kinds of things. The SIP program is available all year long, from July the 1st to June the 30th. We think we misunderstood a little bit, and so did many of our neighboring counties, because I will tell you that 25% of the counties in North Carolina are totally out of crisis intervention program monies right now. As you heard Sherry say just a minute ago, we have about $3,200 left. We imagine that will probably be gone in the next couple of days. And we too will be out of that crisis pot of money. And we're really worried about that. We were really worried about it last year. And we went to the commissioners, we talked with you about it, but we didn't really have a winner last year. So we were able to slide by. And we did get 4 allotments of money in that crisis pot last year. We got $17,600 to begin with. Then we got $36,200. Then a little bit later on, we got $140,000. And then we got $73,000. So that all totaled up to be $267,123 that we got last year in the crisis intervention program. This year, our first allotment was $122,918. There's $3,200 left of that money. During the summer, we had an abnormal year this year. We had many, many days that were above 90 degrees. The SIP program goes to serve families where there is that emergency in the home, and you might have an elderly person in that home, you might have a new baby out of the hospital, you might have somebody who's just had surgery and come home, and heat's just as dangerous to them as cold weather is. So we spent a big part of our money this year on days when the forecast for several days is in the 60s or the 70s. We stopped giving that money. We have turned it on and turned it off a dozen times in the last couple of months, trying to make the best, be the best stewards of that money that we possibly can. We were told to not expect any more money, but I will tell you, when I went to Raleigh 2 weeks ago, there was anticipation of the possibility of some, they called it overflow money from last year, and also some contingency funds coming into the state. So we're going to keep our fingers crossed and hope that we get some more of that money. However, if we do not get more money, we will be really concerned during the cool months. So then, if SIP is gone, enters our LEAP, which is Low Income Energy Assistance Program. We don't start taking those applications until the first day of December. And on the first day of December, we start taking those applications for people who are 60 and over, people receiving disability payments through Social Security, veterans who receive 100% disability payment, or receive Medicaid based on disability, or those who receive railroad retirement and are eligible for Medicare. Those are the only folks that we will begin taking applications as of the first day of December. And of course, since that's on the weekend, December the 3rd will be the first day we start taking applications. We anticipate quite a response to that, because here's the thing. In 2010, we got $368,966 of LEAP funds. In 2011, we got $79,919. That's $280,000 difference. This year, so far, we've gotten $54,294. We don't know in LEAP either whether we'll get. Last year, we got 3 allotments of LEAP, so it is possible that we'd get some more monies, but once that's a one-time vendor payment. Once that money's gone, it's gone. So we're really concerned because our other families, right now, starting that December the 1st, it'll be our elderly and our disabled. The family will only have to have one person in the home this year that's 60 or over. But until February the 1st, we won't be taking any applications from other families, just families that have young children in the home. So we're really concerned about that. We're afraid all of our money will be gone by February the 1st. And if we have a colder winter, that could be quite a problem. So we wanted you to be aware of that. I don't know if you have any questions about that. For LEAP, it's a one-time vendor payment. It is a specific amount, and it's determined. Last year, it was determined on the kind of heating source you had. If you had electricity, you got a certain allotment, $400. If you had wood, you got a certain allotment. This year, it's dependent on how many people are in the home, and I think, let's see, what did I put? The number of people in the home and the percent of poverty level. So there will be, if you have greater poverty level, you would be eligible for a little bit more. But those are the things that will be used to determine this year for the programs. With SIP, a family can only get $600. With emergency assistance, they can only get $300. With LEAP, it's a predetermined one-time vendor payment. So we have 3 programs. Those are the monies coming into the county. We are concerned, and we wanted y'all to know it. We want the commissioners to know it, that we could get into a tough situation this year where we have no funds for heating. Do y'all have any questions about that?
We have no, the county either has to come up with the dollars or we have nothing to offer.
Right. The agency has no other funding sources to go to for that, so.
And the county front the money in case we do get it, and if we do get it, we can refund the county, or? No, we can't do that probably.
We've not had to ask them to do that before. This will probably be the first time. And you can see things, us starting to have a tougher time in this county. Last year, we had our first waiting list in childcare that we've ever had in this community. We were able to, by the end of the year, resolve that waiting list and bring everybody, but we're back on a waiting list this year because of childcare funding. We have over 70 children, I think, on our waiting list. Last time I talked to Kay, it was over 70 children on our waiting list for childcare. So you see that we're starting to, the monies are not enough. And I think Sherry tells me all the time, we go about 70% of the way through the year. And at that point, we tap out every funding allocation that's available to Alexander County. And we are on the county dollar at that point. We pull down and we work with we have a representative from the state that works with us, and we work with her to make sure that we don't leave even a dime on the table. We pull down every cent of funding that we can in every category, but that is where we are as a community. At about 70% of the way through the year, we are out of state and federal funding, and we are on the county dollar. So I couldn't tell you, I don't know what they'll say tonight when I talk with the
No,
commissioners. But, I wanted to bring it to their attention, that we could be in a tough situation around maybe January. Thank you. Okay. And I'll actually,
Cindy, yeah, you can go ahead with your
okay.
report. We'll give you a chance to get your sip of soda.
I just kind of, we have only one vacancy right now in the clerical unit, and that is for Kay Ivy, and she is retiring, and she will be recognized at the commissioners' meeting. She's out of town today, or she'll be here to be recognized this afternoon, but she will be given the key to the county tonight at the commissioners' meeting. And we love Kay. Everybody at the agency loves Kay. We're sick to see her leave, but happy for her that she's going to get to enjoy retirement while she's still in good health and feisty as she can be. I wanted to mention to you, some of you I've mentioned individually about the trip to Philadelphia. I went to the Leadership Academy for Middle Managers. It was a wonderful trip, a great experience. I appreciate so much you afforded me that opportunity. It did not cost the county anything other than my salary. All of my travel and meals and hotel were paid for. But it was such a great leadership opportunity, and I'd love to send Holly sometime if I get the opportunity, just for her to be able to have that experience. It was a really helped you stop and take when you're doing your job every day, you don't have the opportunity to think about style, about leading in context, and having, they talked with us about how do you have strong expectations for your staff, and how do you demonstrate that you have those same strong expectations for yourself, leading by results. They went over so many concepts. I'm telling you, it was all I could do, and I'm an Alzheimer's candidate anyway, so I had a hard time grasping. They went through so much information, but it was just an absolutely wonderful training. We learned to do logic models and eco maps, and of course I'd been through some of that in school before, but I guess the thing that stuck out for me the most was we did some personality inventory, and probably 12 or 15 years ago I did some of that, and I came out at that time on that particular test as an expressive driver, which means not afraid to speak out, someone who's verbal, and then task-driven. Got to get it done, won't push it through. This time I did a completely different test, but I came out as an influencing executor, which means the exact same thing. No trouble speaking out, trying to influence others and get them to do what you want them to do, and then getting it done, that task-driven person. So what I learned was I haven't changed in the last 12 or 15 years, but it really was a good opportunity. And the last day I was able to give a presentation in front of one of the trainers that was, nationally recognized trainer, and in front of a group, and get real direct feedback, which I'm used to giving, not used to getting so much. So that was a good experience also. Another thing on my director's agenda today, I wanted to bring to your attention, I'm just never ceased to amazed at this staff about all the things that they do in addition to their jobs. They do their jobs every day, and their jobs are hectic. Their caseloads are high. I don't know how many of you, Barbara's been on here a couple years now. Phil, you've been on here about a year. You've probably heard us say the caseloads are going up in FNS. They're going up in FNS. They're going up in Medicaid. And even with those rising caseloads, they rise to the occasion. I wanted to tell you about just a few of the things they've done in the last couple of months. Over and above their jobs, we'll just start with, they did a booth at the Apple Festival and the Ellendale Festival for Relay for Life. In October, they put on what we called a boo breakfast and a vendor fair for our staff. Our Personnel Recognition Committee did that just specifically to recognize our staff and help them to just have some enjoyment at work on one day. Some folks dressed up. We had all kind of good food, and we had some vendors that came in and sold all kinds of things, jewelry and different crafts and things, and staff really enjoyed it, and it's just a nice way to build morale. In November, we had a Porta Pit fundraiser for Angel Tree, which will be coming up. Raised $2,500 in one day, sold almost 900 plates. We had a Thanksgiving luncheon the other day. The management team bought the meats and everybody brought a dish, and we had a really nice meal, and they decorated the room real festively, and we enjoyed that. They're in the middle of doing a knife sales for NCSSA right now. They raffled off Carrie Underwood tickets and were donated for the Angel Tree. And on the 21st of December, they'll be doing a snack day which is where we put all kinds of food out and graze all day. Also by the Personnel Recognition Committee. But I just wanted you to know that they take care of the community. They raise funds constantly for things like United Way and Red Cross and, Relay for Life. They take care of their own with their Personnel Recognition Committee, and they are just an awesome staff. So I wanted you to be aware of all those things that they're doing. The last thing on my little agenda was I wanted to bring to your attention, and I've talked to you a little bit about this before. We have taken a hit in one of our funding resources for Child Protective Services, and that is our 4E funding for our in-home services cases. So those are the cases where we have substantiated or found them to be in need of services, which means we've sent them on for mandatory services for the family. Up until this year, we have always received a 100% reimbursement through 4E funding if the cases were high risk. We heard the state had an administrative cost review last year, and we began to get warnings that we were going to no longer receive that 100% funding. And I'm not surprised about that, because when we send a case over into foster care, we determine whether that case is 4E eligible. And the children who are 4E eligible pull down 4E funding, and those who don't, they receive state foster home funding or some other kind of funding. We had never done that for our in-home kids before. We had just kind of blanket said all of them are eligible for 4E funding. So we've recently had a federal review that says, oh, no, they're not. And we started to get warnings that we were going to lose some of this funding. So back and forth, some counties budgeted this cut, some didn't. We took what we thought was the safe ground and budgeted it for half the year. We budgeted the cut. Where it's coming out at is we're actually that cut's going to be 10 months out of the year instead of 6 months. So we're looking at a loss of about 34 to, as best we could tell, and it's an estimate. But Sherry looked at it today, and as best we could tell, $34,000 to $35,000 in reimbursements for in-home services. So we wanted you to be aware of that we have lost that funding source. There are other funding streams that we can pull down for in-home services, but what happens with those is, for instance, with our we have letters assigned for our X-coding. That funding is usually used for our adult services most of the time. We only have a set amount of funding, so if we start pulling down that funding, we'll just pull it down more quickly. In other words, a minute ago I said by 70% of the year we'll be through with our federal and state funding. Well, it would just cause us to pull some of those funding sources down more quickly, and we'd still be back on the county dime. So that's a revenue loss. Was not totally unanticipated. I will tell you that there are some large counties, Buncombe, for instance, who did not budget that cut, and that's a huge impact to their budget. They're a very large county, and so they are taking quite a hit and it certainly was a gamble either way. I could have budgeted the cut, and then we might have received the funding all year long. But I wanted to make you aware of that. It is a revenue loss. And I think that is all that is on my agenda for today. Unless you have any questions about any of those things.
I don't. Do you feel? Okay. Are there any other items from any of the board members? Do you have any questions at all? We will now enter into closed session under General Statute 143-38.11. Do I have a motion to enter into closed session?
So moved.
And get a second. A second. The next meeting will be posted on the internet. It should be the time and everything. We will discuss that today, and then Cindy or me, one will put it on the internet for everybody as soon as possible. Thank you.